The old scissors made a familiar clicking sound as Ben Sullivan cleaned them for the third time that day. His barber shop had seen exactly 2 customers since sunrise, and the afternoon was dragging like a broken hover cart. Outside the small window, aliens of various shapes and sizes walked past on Harmony Station's main corridor, but none seemed interested in a haircut. Ben wiped down his leather chair and glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until closing time. He had moved to this remote trading post 2 years ago, hoping for adventure and steady work. The adventure part had been disappointing, mostly involving fixing broken air filters and listening to traders complain about shipping delays. The work was steady enough, though. Aliens might not need human-style haircuts, but many appreciated his skill with grooming their various fur, feathers, and other appendages. A soft chime announced someone entering his shop. Ben looked up from organizing his tools to see a figure in a dark hooded cloak. The stranger was tall, taller than most humans, but moved with an odd grace that suggested they were not entirely human either. Ben could not see their face clearly under the deep hood. "We are closed?" the stranger asked in heavily accented Galactic Standard. The voice sounded female, with an odd musical quality that made Ben want to listen more carefully. "Not yet," Ben replied, setting down his cleaning cloth. "What can I do for you?" The stranger shifted, and Ben noticed she was carrying something. It looked like a pet carrier, the expensive kind made from some kind of metal mesh that let air through but kept whatever was inside hidden. Strange sounds came from within. Not quite animal noises, but definitely the sounds of something alive and unhappy. "I need assistance," the woman said, her accent making the words sound formal and careful. "My child is very upset, very scared. I must do business on this station, but I cannot take her with me. It is not safe." Ben frowned. "I'm a barber, not a babysitter." The woman reached into her cloak and pulled out a small bag that clinked with the sound of credits. Real credits, not the digital transfers most people used these days. "I will pay well. You seem calm, peaceful. My child needs someone like this." Ben looked at the carrier again. The sounds from inside were getting louder, more distressed. Whatever was in there was clearly frightened. He had always been good with nervous customers, whether they were humans afraid of scissors or aliens, worried about trusting their appearance to someone from another species. "How long are we talking about?" he asked. "Few hours only. Maybe until morning. I cannot say exactly." Ben considered this. The credits in that bag would pay his rent for 2 months. And honestly, watching someone's pet or child could not be more boring than sitting in his empty shop all evening. "What kind of child?" he asked. The woman hesitated. "She is special, different, but harmless. She just needs quiet place to rest while I work." Ben nodded toward his back room. "I've got a comfortable chair back there, and it's away from the main corridor noise. Will that work?" Relief seemed to wash over the stranger, though he still could not see her face clearly. "Yes, that would be very good." She handed him the bag of credits. Ben nearly dropped it. There were far more credits than he had expected. This was enough money to live comfortably for months. "I do not need this much," he said, trying to hand some back. "Keep it," the woman said firmly. "My child is very precious to me. If something happened to her—" She trailed off, but Ben heard, real worry in her voice. Ben carried the pet carrier to his back room, which was really just a small space with an old armchair and a table where he kept his guitar. The carrier was heavier than expected, and whatever was inside had gone completely silent. "She might be shy at first," the woman explained, following him. "Do not try to force her out. Let her come to you if she chooses." "Any special foods or anything she needs?" "No, just be kind to her." The woman paused. "You play music?" She had noticed the guitar leaning against the wall. "A little. Helps pass the time." Something in her voice changed, became more interested. "She might like that. My people. We appreciate music." Before Ben could ask what she meant by "my people," the woman was already heading for the door. "I will return as soon as I can. Thank you for this kindness." And then she was gone, leaving Ben alone with whatever was in the carrier. For several minutes, he just stood there looking at it. The mesh was too fine to see through clearly, but he could make out vague shapes moving inside. Whatever was in, there was about the size of a small dog or cat, based on how much the carrier had weighed. Curious sounds started coming from inside again, not quite whimpers, but definitely the sounds of something unhappy. Ben had dealt with nervous animals before. His grandmother had rescued stray cats when he was young, and he had learned patience from watching her coax frightened creatures out of hiding. "Hey there," he said softly, sitting down in the chair near the carrier. "I'm Ben. Your mom asked me to keep you company for a while." The sound stopped immediately. Whatever was inside was listening. Ben reached slowly for the latch on the carrier door. "I'm going to open this up, okay? You don't have to come out if you don't want to." The latch clicked open. Ben sat back in his chair and waited. Nothing happened for a long time. Then very slowly something moved in the shadows of the carrier. A small snout poked out, followed by what looked like a reptilian head covered in dark scales that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Ben blinked hard, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. But no. What emerged from the carrier was definitely not a normal pet. It was clearly reptilian, with 4 legs and a long tail, but it moved with intelligence in its bright golden eyes that no ordinary animal possessed. The scales shifted color slightly in the light from deep blue to green to purple. A baby dragon. He was looking at an actual baby dragon. The creature studied him with those remarkable eyes, its head tilted in a way that seemed almost human in its curiosity. It was beautiful and alien and unlike anything Ben had ever imagined he might encounter. "Well," Ben said quietly, not wanting to startle it, "you're definitely special." The baby dragon took one tentative step out of the carrier, then another. Its movements were careful, ready to dart back to safety at the first sign of danger. But Ben remained perfectly still, letting it set the pace. This was going to be an interesting evening. The baby dragon had been crouched at the edge of the pet carrier for nearly an hour, watching Ben with those intelligent golden eyes. Every small movement he made caused the creature to tense, ready to bolt back into the safety of its mobile den. Ben had tried everything he could think of to help it relax. Soft words, slow movements, even offering it some water in a small bowl. Nothing worked. If anything, the little dragon seemed to be getting more anxious as time passed. Ben could see the creature trembling now, its iridescent scales shifting through worried shades of deep purple and gray. Occasionally it would make a small sound, somewhere between a whimper and a chirp that tugged at his heart. This was clearly a frightened child, regardless of what species it belonged to. "Come on, little one," Ben murmured, leaning back in his chair to appear less threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon's tail twitched, and it took a half-step backward toward the carrier. Ben realized his voice, however gentle, might be making things worse. Some animals responded better to being ignored than to direct attention. He sat quietly for a while, occasionally glancing at the dragon but mostly just existing in the same space without trying to interact. The creature seemed to appreciate this less direct approach. Its trembling lessened slightly, and the worried colors in its scales began to fade to more neutral blues and greens. Ben's eyes fell on his old acoustic guitar leaning against the wall. He had brought it with him from Earth when he moved to Harmony Station. It was one of the few things he owned that reminded him of home. On long, lonely evenings after the shop closed, he would play simple songs his father had taught him years ago. Maybe music would help where words had failed. Moving very slowly, Ben reached for the guitar. The dragon watched every motion but did not retreat. Ben settled the instrument across his lap and gently plucked a single string. The clear note rang softly in the small room. The effect was immediate. The dragon's head lifted, ears perking up with sudden interest. Its scales brightened to a warm golden color that matched its eyes. Ben smiled and plucked another string, then another. The dragon crept forward, no longer focused on escape routes but entirely absorbed by the sounds. When Ben began playing a simple melody, An old folk song his grandmother used to sing, the creature moved all the way out of the carrier. The baby dragon sat perfectly still, listening with what could only be described as wonder. Its scales continued to shift colors, but now they moved through beautiful shades of gold and silver and soft blue that seemed to match the rhythm of the music. "You like that, don't you?" Ben said softly, continuing to play. The dragon tilted, its head at his voice, but did not seem afraid anymore. Ben played another song, this one a gentle lullaby. The dragon crept closer, drawn by the music like a moth to flame. By the time Ben finished the second song, the creature was sitting right next to his chair, close enough that he could see the delicate patterns in its scales and the way its eyes reflected the room's lights. "That's better," Ben said, starting a third song. "Music helps, doesn't it?" To his amazement, the dragon made a soft sound that seemed almost like it was trying to sing along. The tone was musical, harmonizing with his guitar in a way that sent chills down Ben's spine. This was not just intelligent behavior, this was artistic appreciation. As Ben continued playing, the dragon grew bolder. It sniffed curiously at his shoes, then at the guitar itself. When Ben played a particularly complex passage, the creature's scales shimmered through rapid color changes that seemed to follow the melody. "Your mother said her people appreciate music," Ben said during a pause between songs. "I'm starting to understand what she meant." The dragon looked up at him when he mentioned its mother, and Ben could have sworn he saw understanding in those golden eyes. This was definitely not an ordinary pet. This was a sapient being, young but clearly intelligent. Ben began playing again, this time improvising rather than sticking to familiar songs. The dragon seemed to love this even more, responding to changes in tempo and key with corresponding shifts in color and posture. When Ben played soft, flowing melodies, the creature relaxed and swayed gently. When he picked up the pace, its scales brightened and it seemed more alert and excited. After an hour of this musical conversation, the dragon did something that completely surprised Ben. It hopped up onto his lap. Ben froze, afraid any movement might startle the creature back into fearfulness, but the dragon simply curled up against his chest like a contented cat, purring with a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Well, I'll be," Ben whispered, carefully adjusting his grip on the guitar so he could continue playing, while the dragon rested against him. "Looks like we're friends now." The dragon's purring intensified and its scales settled into warm, comfortable shades of gold and green. Ben could feel the creature's heartbeat against his chest, rapid but steady. Whatever this little being was, it had clearly decided he was trustworthy. Ben played song after song as the evening wore on. Sometimes the dragon would chirp along in harmony, creating the most beautiful duets Ben had ever been part of. Sometimes it would simply listen, its eyes half closed in contentment. As the night grew later, the dragon's breathing became slower and more regular. The little creature was falling asleep in his arms, lulled by the gentle music and the warmth of human contact. Ben found himself genuinely caring about this strange child. He wondered where it came from, what its species was called, why its mother had to leave it with a stranger. The dragon's trust felt like a precious gift, something he had somehow earned through patience and music. "Sleep well, little one," he whispered, playing a final soft lullaby as the dragon's eyes closed completely. "Whatever you are, wherever you're from, you're safe here." The dragon's purring continued even in sleep, a gentle vibration against Ben's chest that felt oddly comforting. He had never expected to spend his evening as a babysitter for an alien child, but he had to admit it was the most interesting thing that had happened to him since arriving on Harmony Station. Outside his shop, the station's corridors had grown quiet as the business day ended, but inside his small back room, Ben continued to play soft music for his sleeping companion, feeling more content than he had in months. He had no idea that he was holding the future ruler of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. To him, this was simply a frightened child who had needed comfort, and music had been the key to providing it. Sometimes the most profound connections were also the simplest ones. Sunlight was beginning to filter through the small window of Ben's barbershop when he heard the soft chime of his front door opening. He had dozed fitfully in his chair throughout the night, the baby dragon still curled against his chest, warm and peaceful. Every time he had started to move, the creature would stir slightly and he would freeze, not wanting to disturb its rest. Now voices drifted from the main shop area. The hooded woman had returned, and she was not alone. Ben could hear at least 3 other people with her, their footsteps careful and measured in a way that suggested either soldiers or bodyguards. The dragon stirred at the sound of familiar voices, lifting its head and making a soft, questioning chirp. Its scales brightened to alert shades of blue and silver. "That's your mother, isn't it?" Ben whispered. The dragon's head turned toward the sounds, ears perking up with obvious recognition. Ben heard the woman speaking in low tones to her companions, words he could not quite make out. Then her voice came closer as she approached the back room. "Ben, may I enter?" "Come in," he called softly. "But move slowly. She's been sleeping." The woman stepped into the back room, still wearing her hooded cloak, followed by 3 tall figures who remained silent in the doorway. Ben noticed they all wore dark clothing that looked more like uniforms than civilian clothes, and they moved with the disciplined posture of trained guards. When the woman saw her child nestled peacefully in Ben's arms, she stopped abruptly. Ben could not see her face under the hood, but her body language suggested complete surprise. "She is calm," the woman said, and Ben heard genuine amazement in her voice. "She is never calm with strangers." The baby dragon chirped again and started to move, clearly wanting to go to its mother. But when Ben shifted to help it down from his lap, the creature pressed closer to him instead, making distressed sounds. "It's okay," Ben said gently, reaching for his guitar. "Let me play something first." He strummed a few soft chords and immediately the dragon relaxed. Its scales shifted to contented gold and green, and it settled back against Ben's chest with that wind chime purring sound. The woman stepped closer and Ben caught a glimpse of her face under the hood. Her features were elegant and sharp, definitely not human, with the same golden eyes as her child. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, and when she moved he thought he saw the hint of scales along her jawline. "What did you do?" she asked, her accent less heavy now, as if she was more comfortable or less worried about hiding her identity. "The finest caregivers in the galaxy cannot achieve what you have done with simple music." Ben shrugged, still playing gentle melodies. "I just treated her like any scared kid." Music seemed to help her relax. The dragon had begun making soft musical sounds in harmony with the guitar, just as it had done throughout the night. The woman's eyes widened at this display. "She sings," the woman breathed. "She has never sung for anyone outside our immediate family." Ben smiled. "She's got a beautiful voice. We had quite a few duets last night." One of the silent figures in the doorway stepped forward and spoke in a language Ben did not recognize. The woman responded in the same language, her tone sharp and commanding. The figure stepped back immediately. "My companions are concerned about schedule," the woman explained to Ben. "But I had not expected this situation." She approached slowly, extending her hands toward her child. The baby dragon looked between Ben and its mother, scales flickering with uncertainty. When the woman tried to lift it, the creature clung to Ben's shirt and began making distressed sounds again. "Here," Ben said, continuing to play with one hand while gently encouraging the dragon with the other. "It's okay, little one. Your mom's here." The woman waited patiently as Ben played a calming melody and spoke softly to her child. Gradually, the dragon allowed itself to be transferred, though it kept looking back at Ben and reaching toward the guitar. "She wants you to keep playing," the woman observed. Ben nodded and continued the gentle tune. The dragon settled in its mother's arms, though its attention remained fixed on Ben and the music. "You have a gift," the woman said, pulling back her hood completely. Her face was strikingly beautiful in an otherworldly way, with high cheekbones and features that seemed carved from precious stone. The scales Ben had glimpsed along her jawline extended down her neck in elegant patterns that caught the light. My people are naturally musical, but what you have done, this is extraordinary. Ben felt embarrassed by the praise. It was nothing special. She just needed someone to be patient with her. Patient, the woman repeated, as if the word held special meaning. Yes, that is a rare quality. She reached into her cloak and produced another bag of credits, even larger than the first. This does not fully repay what you have given us, but I don't need more money, Ben interrupted. What you paid before was already too much. The woman stared at him. You would refuse payment? She's a sweet kid. I enjoyed spending time with her. The dragon made a soft sound and reached toward Ben again. Its mother looked between them thoughtfully. I may have need of your services again, the woman said carefully. My duties, they often require me to travel, and as you have seen, my daughter does not adapt well to new situations. Ben considered this. I suppose that would be all right. She's welcome here any time. You would do this? Care for a child of my species, without asking what we are or where we come from? Ben looked at the baby dragon who was still watching him with those remarkable golden eyes. Does it matter? She's just a kid who needs someone to keep her safe and happy while her mother works. That's enough for me. The woman's expression became intense, studying Ben as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You are not what I expected from the reports about humans. Reports? Your species has a reputation for being aggressive, warlike. Ben chuckled. Some of us, maybe. But most humans I know just want to live their lives in peace and help their neighbors when they can. The dragon chirped and made grasping motions toward the guitar. Ben obligingly played a few more notes, making the creature purr with contentment. She will want to return, the woman warned. You may find yourself with a regular visitor. That's fine by me. It gets pretty quiet around here. The woman spoke again to her companions in their language. Ben caught what sounded like orders. Their postures straightened and they nodded respectfully before filing out of the shop. I must go, the woman said to Ben, but we will return soon. As she moved toward the door, still carrying her now content child, Ben called out, What's her name? I spent all night with her, and I never knew what to call her. The woman paused. Her name is Ember. Ember, Ben repeated, and the baby dragon's head turned at the sound. That's a pretty name. And you are Ben Sullivan, the woman said. It was not a question. Ben raised an eyebrow. How do you know my full name? I make it my business to know about people I trust with what is most precious to me. She adjusted Ember in her arms. Until we meet again, Ben Sullivan. After they left, Ben sat alone in his shop, still holding his guitar. The place felt strangely empty without Ember's presence. He found himself looking forward to their next visit, wondering what other songs the little dragon might enjoy learning. He had no idea that he had just agreed to become the unofficial caretaker for the heir to an interstellar empire, or that word of his success would soon spread through the highest levels of galactic politics. To Ben, this was simply the beginning of an unusual friendship with a remarkable child and her equally remarkable mother. But as he cleaned up his shop and prepared for another day of regular customers, he could not shake the feeling that his quiet life on Harmony Station was about to become much more interesting. 3 weeks had passed since Ben first met Ember and her mysterious mother, and his life had settled into a pleasant new rhythm. Lyra, as she had asked him to call her, brought Ember to his shop every few days. The visits always followed the same pattern. Lyra would arrive with her silent companions, leave Ember in Ben's care for several hours while she conducted business elsewhere on the station, and return to find her daughter completely content and often fast asleep in Ben's arms. Ben had learned that Ember loved complex melodies and had an incredible ear for harmony. She could remember songs after hearing them just once and would hum along perfectly on repeat visits. Her scales would dance through colors that seemed to match whatever emotion the music conveyed. Bright golds and silvers for happy tunes, deep blues and purples for sad ones, excited reds and oranges for anything with a strong beat. Today had started like any other visit, with Lyra bringing Ember just after lunch. But something felt different. Lyra seemed more tense than usual, and her guardians kept glancing toward the corridor as if expecting trouble. "Is everything all right?" Ben asked as he settled into his chair with Ember on his lap and his guitar ready. "Station politics," Lyra said dismissively, but Ben noticed she did not remove her hood today. "Nothing that concerns you," Ben began, playing one of Ember's favorite songs, a gentle melody he had composed just for her. The baby dragon immediately relaxed and began her soft harmonizing. But Lyra remained standing near the door instead of settling into the spare chair as she usually did. Halfway through the second song, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors and an automated voice announced a station-wide security alert. Ben stopped playing, and Ember made questioning sounds. "What's happening?" Ben asked, but Lyra was already moving toward the door. She spoke rapidly to her companions in their musical language, and they immediately took defensive positions around the shop's entrance. Through the window, Ben could see people running in the corridors, some toward emergency stations and others simply fleeing in panic. "Stay here," Lyra ordered, but she was looking at her guards, not Ben. "Protect them both." Before Ben could ask what she meant, Lyra was gone, vanishing into the chaos outside. Ember began making distressed sounds, her scales shifting to worried grays and purples. "It's okay, little one," Ben said, resuming his playing despite his own growing concern. "Your mother will be back soon." One of the guards stepped into the back room, speaking in accented galactic standard. "Turn on news feeds. Something has happened." Ben activated his small holoscreen, cycling through station news channels until he found one with current information. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Emergency bulletin," the reporter was saying. "The Empress of the Draconic Imperium has been reported missing for over 72 hours. Imperial fleets are mobilizing across 3 star systems, and diplomatic sources suggest the disappearance may have been the result of an assassination attempt." Ben stared at the screen as it displayed images of massive warships and formal portraits of Dragon Court officials. Then the reporter's voice continued with information that made Ben's world tilt sideways. Empress Seraphina was last seen leaving the Imperial Palace with her infant daughter, heir to the throne. Palace sources confirm both the Empress and the young princess are unaccounted for, leading to fears that the Imperial succession may be in jeopardy. The screen showed an official portrait of Empress Seraphina of the Draconic Imperium. Even through the formal styling and ceremonial robes, Ben recognized the face immediately. The golden eyes, the elegant bone structure, the hint of scales along the jawline. Lyra. The woman who had been bringing her daughter to his barber shop was the ruler of one of the most powerful civilizations in known space. Ben looked down at Ember, who was still nestled in his arms, scales now shifting through confused colors as she sensed his distress. The baby dragon he had been playing lullabies for was the heir to an interstellar empire. "Oh," Ben said weakly. "Oh, this is really not good." The guard who had told him to watch the news stepped closer. "You understand now why secrecy was necessary." Ben's mind reeled. "She's been hiding here, from assassins. Imperial Court has many enemies, many who would harm child to damage Empress. This station was chosen because it is unremarkable. No one would think to look for royalty in human barbershop." The news continued with increasingly alarming reports. 3 different alien governments had issued statements expressing concern about the succession crisis. Trade routes were being disrupted as Imperial Navy ships moved to defensive positions. There was even mention of minor border skirmishes breaking out as various factions tested the limits of Imperial response. "The galaxy is going to war," Ben realized. "Because people think she's dead." Ember whimpered, picking up on the tension in the room despite not understanding the cause. Ben automatically began playing again, trying to calm both the baby dragon and his own nerves. She settled slightly, but her scales remained muted and worried. Another guard entered the room, speaking urgently in the dragon language. The first guard's expression became grim. "What is it?" Ben asked. "Imperial ships approach station." "Many ships." Through his window, Ben could see the distinctive shapes of dragon warships taking positions around Harmony Station. They were beautiful and terrifying, all flowing curves and gleaming metal that seemed to shift color like Ember's scales. "Are they here to rescue her?" Ben asked. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they come because someone has betrayed her location." The implications of that hit Ben like a physical blow. If hostile forces knew Lyra was here, if they had tracked her to this unremarkable trading station, then Ember was in terrible danger, and Ben was the only thing standing between a baby dragon and people who wanted to kill her for political reasons. "We protect the princess," the guard said firmly, as if reading Ben's thoughts. "Is our duty." Ben looked at Ember, who had begun making soft, questioning sounds. She was too young to understand what was happening, but she could sense that the adults around her were afraid. "Then we protect her," Ben agreed. He had no training for this kind of situation, no weapons, no special skills beyond cutting hair and playing guitar. But this frightened little being had trusted him, had found comfort in his music and presence. He was not going to let anyone hurt her. The baby dragon looked up at him with those remarkable golden eyes, and Ben made a decision that would change his life forever. Whatever came next, whatever dangers were approaching, he would stand between this child and anyone who meant her harm, even if she was the most important child in the galaxy. The Imperial warships had been docked at Harmony Station for 6 hours when Empress Seraphina finally returned to Ben's shop. She no longer wore the concealing cloak, instead dressed in flowing robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her scales were fully visible now, creating intricate patterns along her arms and neck that marked her as unmistakably royal. Behind her walked a procession of officials, advisors, and guards that filled Ben's small barbershop completely. Some were dragons like Seraphina, others represented different alien species that Ben recognized as major galactic powers. All of them looked very serious and very important. Ben had spent the entire time playing music for Ember, who had remained remarkably calm despite the chaos outside. The baby dragon seemed to understand that as long as Ben was there with his guitar, she was safe. Her scales had returned to their normal happy colors, and she had even taken a nap curled against his chest. "Ben," Seraphina said as she entered the back room. Her voice carried a weight of authority that had not been there before. But when she looked at him, her expression was warm, with genuine gratitude. "Your Majesty?" Ben said awkwardly, not sure of the proper protocol. "I saw the news. I understand now why you needed someone to watch Ember." Seraphina's eyes widened slightly. "You know who we are, and yet you remained here. You continued to care for my daughter even knowing she was in danger." "Where else would I go?" Ben asked. "She needed me." One of the dragon officials stepped forward and spoke rapidly in their musical language. Seraphina responded with obvious irritation, her scales shifting to darker, more commanding colors. The official stepped back respectfully. "My advisors are concerned about security," Seraphina explained. "They cannot understand why a human stranger would risk his life for an alien child." Ben looked down at Ember, who was watching the conversation, with intelligent eyes. "Because she's not an alien child. She's just a child, and children need protecting." The comment seemed to stir something among the assembled officials. Ben heard whispered conversations in several different languages, all with tones of surprise or amazement. "The word has already spread," Seraphina continued. "News services across the galaxy are reporting that the Imperial heir was kept safe by a human barber who calmed her with music. Representatives from dozens of governments have requested meetings." "Meetings with me?" Ben felt overwhelmed by the very idea. The human who succeeded where our finest specialists failed. Who earned my daughter's trust through simple kindness. Seraphina gestured toward the crowded main shop. "3 ambassadors have asked to hear you play. The Galactic Trade Federation wants to discuss cultural exchange programs. The Academic Council believes you represent a new understanding of interspecies harmony." Ben stroked Ember's scales gently, and she purred with contentment. "I just played some songs. You did far more than that." Seraphina sat in the spare chair, suddenly looking less like an empress and more like a grateful mother. Do you know what my daughter's full title will be when she comes of age? I'm guessing it's complicated. Seeker of harmonies, keeper of the ancient songs, voice of the 17 worlds. Serafina smiled. Music is central to our culture, Ben. It determines our politics, our relationships, our entire way of understanding the universe. And my daughter had never responded to music before she met you. The implications of this were starting to sink in. You think I've changed something important? I know you have. The court musicians who have worked with her since birth could not achieve what you did in a single evening. One of the human officials Ben had noticed in the crowd stepped forward. Mr. Sullivan, I'm Ambassador Chen from Earth's diplomatic mission. We've been instructed to offer you any position you might want in our interstellar relations department. Ben blinked. I don't know anything about diplomacy. You've accomplished more in 3 weeks than most diplomats manage in their entire careers, Ambassador Chen replied. Empress Serafina raised a hand for silence. Before others make their offers, I would like to extend my own. She looked directly at Ben. I offer you a place in the imperial court, any title you desire, wealth beyond imagining, and the finest teachers in the galaxy to help you understand the full power of what you have discovered. Ben considered this carefully. The thought of leaving his simple life for the complexities of galactic politics made him deeply uncomfortable. What if I said no? He asked. The question seemed to surprise everyone in the room. Serafina tilted, her head curiously. You would refuse? I like my life here. It's quiet, simple. I fix people up and play music in the evenings. But you could help shape the future of interstellar relations. Ambassador Chen pressed. Your natural ability with cross-species communication could prevent wars, build alliances. Ben looked around the room at all the expectant faces, then down at Ember, who was beginning to fall asleep in his arms. I'll make you a deal, he said to Serafina. I'll stay here and keep doing what I'm doing. When you need someone to watch, Ember, bring her by. I'll teach her songs, keep her safe, and be her friend, but I don't want titles or politics or any of that complicated stuff. And in return? In return, you tell all these important people that humans aren't just warriors or traitors or whatever reputation we have. Sometimes we're just neighbors who want to help. Serafina stared at him for a long moment, then began to laugh. It was a beautiful sound, like silver bells mixed with wind chimes. Ember stirred at the familiar sound and made happy chirping noises. You would turn down an empire to remain a babysitter for my daughter? Best job I've ever had, Ben said honestly. The Empress stood and addressed the room in her commanding voice. You have your answer. This human chooses service over power, kindness over ambition. Remember this when you make your reports about human nature. She turned back to Ben. Your terms are acceptable, but know that you have done something unprecedented today. Word of your choice will spread throughout the galaxy. Will that be a problem? On the contrary, I believe it may be exactly what the galaxy needs to hear. Over the following days, as the various officials and ambassadors departed Harmony Station, Ben found his life settling into a new kind of normal. His barbershop had become something of a pilgrimage site, with beings from across the galaxy stopping by to see the place where an interstellar incident was resolved through music and patience. He still cut hair, still played guitar in the evenings, still lived in the same small apartment behind his shop, but now Imperial ships stood guard over the station, and his appointment book included regular visits from the future ruler of the Draconic Imperium. Ember had grown noticeably in just the few weeks since their first meeting. Her scales were brighter, her songs more complex, and her understanding of language was developing rapidly. She had begun calling him Ben Friend in her own musical language, a title that Serafina assured him was one of the highest honors in dragon culture. As Ben played a lullaby for the sleeping dragon princess one quiet evening, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He had gone from obscure barber to informal ambassador without ever leaving his chair. But the most important thing had not changed at all. When Ember was scared or upset, when the weight of her future seemed too heavy for such small shoulders, Ben would pick up his guitar and play, and she would calm and smile and remember that she was safe. Sometimes the smallest actions had the greatest consequences, and sometimes the most powerful beings in the universe just needed someone to sing them a gentle song